Would you like to start the first item of business is the annual report, which Kevin McKinnon will be presenting to us. This is a public participation item on the agenda, so we will be able to answer questions from the gallery at the end of the report presentation. Kevin, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, municipalities in British Columbia are required to produce an annual report. Under provincial guidelines, the annual report must include audited financial statements, a list of permissive tax exemptions provided, a report on the municipality's services and operations for the previous year, a progress report on the performance of the municipality with respect to established objectives and measures, a statement of objectives and measures that will be used as the basis of determining performance for the current calendar year, and details of any declarations of disqualification made against individual council members during the previous year. So the report must be made available for public inspection 14 days prior to holding the annual meeting. It was released on June 10th. That gives people time to have a look at it and determine if they've got any questions during the report. We've got, hopefully people have had a chance to have a look at this. It is available on the city website. We've got the messages from the mayor, from the CAO about the previous year. The section on the progress report with regards to established objectives and measures is done by the Sustainable Service Assessment Tool, or the SSAT, which council and staff participated in grading the various services. Then each of the individual departments has had an opportunity to give a summary of the previous year and projects and goals coming up for the coming year. A lot of this information council has seen previously. Some of this was done as part of the budgeting process, and some also as part of the introduction to council following the election. So I am hoping that council has had an opportunity to have a look at this. It's not my intention to kind of read it word for word. Some of the graphs here in the financial section, again, have been seen already as part of the budget process, but as part of the annual report, you get to see it again. Lots of pictures. Oddly, many of them flood related in some capacity or another. Again, council is seeing this carry forward capital projects from 2018, and then a list of those new projects that came up during the budget process. This is the list of the permissive property tax exemptions. And in 2018, there were no declarations of disqualified council members. And then we get into the audited financial statements, which again, council has seen recently in the workshop with Kim Harvey Birch. This section makes up a little over half of the annual report, and should be no new information here. guess at this point, Mr. Mayor, as I'm scrolling through here and keeping everybody entertained with text whizzing by on the screen, if there are any questions from the public, we have not received anything by email.
Let me open with, what would it take for a councillor to be disqualified?
A lot.
I'm just wondering what the criteria for that was.
If they, Your Worship, if they went against the oath of office.
Broke their oath of office?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if they got to take it to court,
Conflict of interest.
Or information out of camera?
That wouldn't be cause for disqualification. That usually goes to courts. It's usually a fine, and it's breach of confidentiality unless it's something that really impedes the community financially. That it gets a little bit more serious. That would be kind of one of those pieces where they normally would be disqualified unless it was pushed through courts.
Serious?
Yes.
Well, that's good to hear. We do.
No.
So gallery and council, we're open to questions for the annual report. Councillor Thompson?
I just want to give my compliments to our management team for the preparation of this report. It's one of the best ones I've seen, so thank you very much for that.
Kudos. Further comments? Seeing none, can I have a motion to accept the annual report? Councillor Krog? Councillor Studley? All those in favor? Thank you very much, Kevin. Smoothly done. The next item is the adoption of the agenda for June the 24th. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Corlick, Councillor Zielinski. It's a half a hand.
Yeah, in addition to the agenda.
And we have a possible addition. What's your...
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as a later item, I would like to add a discussion on the warming center, please. No, I'd like to put it as a later item for discussion purposes.
Is there any objection to that, Council? And you're seconding the motion to the amended agenda?
Yes.
We have a first and second on that. All those in favor? Carried. And we have two sets of minutes here. One is the nothing in it special to go in camera, and the other is the June 10th regular meeting. Can I combine those two in a motion to adopt those minutes? June the 10th special go in camera and regular minutes of June the 10th. Councillor Krog, Councillor Studley, all those in favor? And we have Vicki G. from the regional district here to give us a presentation and information on the Co-op Association. Exciting stuff happening in the West Boundary. Welcome, Vicki.
Thank you. Big button, he said. Thank you. So first of all, I'll start off by saying that I do have an ask of you, and that is to authorize your mayor to sign this very brief letter of support, which basically identifies a need in our community. And so now I'll back up and I'll talk about how we got to be here. So I had many attempts to try to create some kind of community-owned property in Rock Creek, and things just kept ending nowhere until a Soyuz credit union came to town and was looking for a place to set up a branch. And so I began a conversation with them that ended up involving Rock Creek Farmers Institute. And between the two organizations, they bought property, the old Idlewild property, just outside of Rock Creek. And then we formed a Community Services Cooperative Association, which is a nonprofit co-op. And the co-op now has a 99-year renewable lease for use of the property. So the co-op will build the buildings, own the buildings, and run all of the activities on the property. And I don't know if you know, but that property is actually the historic Riverside Center, which in the 1850s during the gold rush was a pretty busy place. There were 14 different buildings on the site apparently. You wouldn't know that now. So we always did intend to go on to do some food processing on that property. And our top priority was meat processing. I don't know if you guys are aware, but we have a young family in the Rock Creek area who own and run a Class B provincially inspected abattoir, not on our site, I should add. It's just maybe about a kilometer away. And so that has been a real boon in the area because, of course, for farmers to legally sell their product, they have to be able to have it slaughtered in an inspected facility, and then cut and wrap is, it could be done anywhere. But what's happened is in the Rock Creek area, at least, we've had we had a number of small people that were part of the year doing cut and wrap, doing a lot of wild game and some local beef and pork and chickens and such. But what happened is that we began to accumulate all of our cut and wrap, like the serious for resale product, into two cut and wrap operations. One of them has left town, so that just leaves the one, Magnum Meats. So even with two in town, we were struggling to be able to keep up. So the abattoir can slaughter 5 days a week, but they're only able to slaughter 1 to 2 days a week because there's not enough space at their current location to be able to fit enough people in. But they do have 9 employees now, and in 2018 they did not have to lay anyone off at any time during the year, which is pretty significant. And they actually have, I've seen some stats on this recently, they have over 800 clients, and those clients are coming from as far away as Karamias and Kelowna and all through the boundary, right through to Christina Lake. So I have had contact from people on the east side of the boundary. I've had a lot of contact from people on the west side because I'm closer to them. But I've had contact from people on the east side basically saying, do I buy chicks this year? Will I be able to get them into the slaughterhouse, right? And the young family that operates the cut and wrap and the abattoir are beside themselves because they just, no matter how many hours they work, they just can't have the throughput. So it's been our intention to build something that they could lease. And so now we have a couple of opportunities coming up. One of them is rural dividend application. So our plan was to ask the regional district to apply for a $500,000 partnership grant to build a facility that could replace their current cramped cut and wrap. Another opportunity has arisen. The province has put out a request for qualifications call for people for organizations for creation of a food hub. And I've been to a couple of discussions from the ministry and Ministry of Agriculture, and they're very keen on developing food hubs and what they can do in communities. They have a number of them, and this latest outreach is to try to get some located in other areas. So we feel like we're in a really good position to be able to apply to become a food hub. And so the actual letter that you're being asked to sign just identifies about the 2018 Ag Plan, the support it's received, and also the need that's identified in that plan for farmers to be able to do value-added processing. Minister Popham has said she thinks there's enough market in BC alone to be able to handle more value-added processing of food. And of course, another thing that it can do is and it's not just about the physical building and the processing that would go on there. It's also about providing education and support for people who want to do value added and be able to sell it locally. So for example, at one of the local boundary agricultural advisory committees, we had a young farmer who's interested in getting his food to a certain level of certification so he can sell it to some of the big box stores that are in town. Because they have criteria for that. So as part of our proposal, and this request for qualifications is basically just going to look at all the applications and decide who they would invite to continue on the conversation. So it's looking pretty good when I read through the material. The people that are involved and the organizations that are involved, although the co-op is new, if you look at when all the member organizations were incorporated, we're looking at a couple of 100 years of time here. The consultant that's working with the co-op has a lot of experience in the food sector. She's currently, she was one of the founders of the Small Scale Food Processors Association that was founded in 2002. And out of that organization, the BC Abattoir Association split off because it was pretty specialized. And so the consultant is actually, she's got a $300,000 grant for the small scale food processors right now, and she's dealing with people on a national basis, looking at the possibility of expanding that across the country and bringing additional supports to the small scale food processors. So the consultant is also reaching out to a couple of local universities, to Thompson River University, where Dr. Church has identified that he's very willing and very excited to participate in a study that will look at certifying, not a study, a process to look at certification for grass-fed beef. So we have excellent beef in our area that is primarily grass-fed, but once it goes off to auction and off to Alberta, it's indistinguishable from other product. So we really think that there's a big opportunity there to be able to identify that and to quantify it so that people recognize it. There's also a lot of possibility for marketing. And part of the Magnum Meats, which is the cut and wrap that I'm speaking of, they got a Ministry of Agriculture grant in the spring, and part of that grant had a workshop in Rock Creek where we invited food processors from all across the boundary to come, and there were about 35 people in the room, and boy, they were just right in lockstep in terms of what needed to be done, and they brought up the issue of shared marketing and doing things like developing product branding and being able to move product for sale. There is another relationship with Kwantlen University College, where Dr. Kent Molyneux is, we're asking him to work with us on his bioregional food system survey. So that's pretty exciting. We've also reached out to the Kettle Valley Food Co-op. They're an organization, as you probably all know, that started quite a few years ago and have come a long ways in terms of developing systems to connect consumers with producers. And they have software and they have storefront, but they could really use some help in terms of resourcing, and we're really interested in having them be involved as a way to move product across the boundary and then maybe eventually outside of the boundary as well. We know that there are people in the West Boundary that would be interested in being involved with that co-op, but the distance has just made it too challenging. So very exciting. We think we have a good chance at this. And so again, my ask is if you could authorize your mayor to sign this letter.
Thank you, Vicki. And questions from council, starting Councillor Krog and Corbett.
Oh, can you give us just an example or a succinct detail of a food hub?
So when we were looking at just applying for the rural dividend grant, we were looking at building a building that wasn't that big, maybe 2,400 to 3,000 square feet, just to house the cut and wrap. Once we got down the line of food hub, we're looking at buying smoking equipment, sausage making equipment, and a soup line. And the soup line could be used to, for example, to make beef bone broth soup, which would produce a healthy, saleable product and which would also remove waste from the landfill. Oh, I should add that another thing that we're working on is having a lab on site that would be able to test food. So, you know, a lot of pieces that if you're just an individual farmer that's trying to do something on their own to develop a product, you would be pretty challenged to do because it would just be beyond your means.
Councillor Corlick.
So a food hub, thank you. A food hub is basically to do with meat and poultry. Is what I'm thinking.
Oh no, it doesn't have to be just meat. That was a critical need that we identified in the ag plan and that we are experiencing across the boundary. But you know, there's no limit to what we could be doing there. And you know, the idea also of a hub is that people come, use the services, and eventually they become successful and move out and start up their own facility somewhere. So, and then others move in.
So therefore, as if I was, I don't know, growing some, or I guess baking or doing something like that, I could have a spot in there to sell myself? What's that?
Well, let's put it this way. If we have a soup line in there, then that could be used by the people that are doing the cut and wrap or by someone else that was taking on that part of the business. But there could also be a locally branded borscht, you know, borscht from Grand Forks, produced in a, you know, commercially safe place with a lab for testing, you know, that kind of thing.
Definitely production place.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Nikki, okay, you're talking cut and wrap. So can I, from Grand Forks, come to that and purchase meat?
I'm sure hoping so.
Okay, so it's going to be like a meat market.
Well, we do have a retail section in our design of the building, and right now we haven't identified who would operate that. You know, it could be the co-op, or else it could be a social enterprise as well. And you know, it is really important. Not everybody can afford to buy a quarter or a side of beef, or any longer want them when their families are gone. And you know, it'd be nice just to be able to go and buy hamburger or bacon or, you know, something.
Pork chops or
yes. And then hopefully you wouldn't have to come to Rock Creek. Hopefully we could have a system of moving that product as well, and moving products that are raised in Grand Forks that we're not good at growing in the West Boundary.
Councillor Zielinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Vicki, any financial implications for the city? Any matching grants that we have to?
No.
Okay. Second question is, last I heard is there was supposed to be a mobile abattoir of some sort. Did that ever take off or anything like that?
It was a real albatross for the community to manage, and at this point in time it's been sold to a private user.
And that was an initiative of the Grand Forks Boundary Agricultural Association. And you know, that project was undertaken at a time where when the province had come in with new meat regulations that just basically knocked the floor out from underneath of all of our local farmers. You know, you were no longer able to just slaughter on premises and have your meat cut and wrapped and sold to your neighbor, kind of thing. So they tried really hard, and it was expensive, and they ended up having to sell it. But you know, this one's not mobile.
Unfortunately, but part of that was bad regulations, and I've toured the facilities at Vicky's place there, and I'm amazed at it. It's nothing that could have been handled at all by a mobile unit. Councillor Mosley.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Director G. A couple questions about the project. First off, How big a parcel of land are we talking about?
It's about 4.6 acres.
Okay.
However, it's not all on the nice flat part.
Okay,
It goes
it goes up the hill too. Because, as you were telling me, discussing with me, right now, you're in the process of constructing a co-op building.
Yes, it'll be owned by the co-op. I don't know if I would call it a co-op building. This is what that building looks like.
Okay.
So it's meant to kind of have a heritage look, and inside it's going to have office space for rent by nonprofits. So we're going to have boundary invasive species there. They've been running for decades out of Barb Stewart's basement, and a number of other nonprofits.
So, okay, so that's the co-op building, and the funding for it is already in place.
Yes.
Can I ask where that funding?
Sure. Some came from the Soyuz Credit Union,
Okay.
and $100,000 of Area E gas tax,
Okay.
and then the rest will be in a mortgage.
All right, and then the second part of the project is another building,
Yes.
which is the food hub.
Yes.
And it will be built somewhere on the 4 acres too,
Yes. Right next door.
right
to this
next door.
building.
Okay, but that's basically what we're signing up for is to sponsor the food hub project.
There's no mention in particular of like the letter that you're signing just basically acknowledges the need, the urgent need, the importance of the need for. That's what you're.
A food hub.
Not for a food hub, the urgent need for meat value-added services, the importance of farmers to be able to scale up their production to meet existing demand, the importance of farmers to have the opportunity to add value to their products, to increase their income and stretch sales throughout the year, and the need for professional food consulting services to support food processing enterprises.
Excellent point.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Crock. Motion to sign this support letter for Director G and her project. Councillor Zielinski seconds it. And further discussion on this? It's exciting to get a glimpse into things that are moving forward there. And
Thank you very much.
so
I really
a lot of
appreciate
support.
that.
Council, all those in favor? All right, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Director G. The next item of business is staff reports. And this evening we have two reports. One from Councillor Moslin, which is a non-report, I think.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it was sort of a non-report, Mayor, and I was kind of hopeful that there would be a bit more of an echo about Roger Brooks, and I wanted to make sure that Mr. Brooks, that presentation was on our agenda, just so we could discuss it. I was unfortunately out of town, so I didn't get to view it in person, thanks to Mr. Johnson. I did get to watch the first 3 hours of it last night, and I found it very informative. I think there was 20 action steps. It was interesting to note very quickly that there's basically actions for the owners, actions for the city, and actions for the shop proprietors. And so it wasn't all going to fall in the city's lap. So it really looked like a really comprehensive plan, and I'm looking forward to learning more details about it and hearing more about it in the weeks ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Studley had a report.
Yeah, I just attended the car show. That looked like it was a very well organized event. There were lots of people there. Had a blast actually performed, so I had a blast performing. I presented the scholarships from this on behalf of the city to some of the grad class of this year, and that, as always, that's an excellent event, well attended. Roger Brooks, I attended some of the things in person, lots of things I had to watch online, and then things to less. There's so many great ideas there. I'm glad to see so many of the businesses implementing ones that they're able to do. I just can't wait to sort of dig into the city ones that are getting and start implementing those things.
Thank you. very much, Councillor Studley, and appreciate you attending and giving those awards out at the event. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, and thanks to Les Johnson, I was able to watch all 6+ hours of the Roger Brook presentation, which I was really impressed with. I was negligent when we adopted the agenda. I had intended to add the Downtown Business Association to speak to the Roger Brooks report with respect to some of the more imperative and urgent items. And accordingly, I would like to ask Council's indulgence, and I will make a motion if required, to ask the President of the DBA to make a brief presentation with respect to that report.
And Council, can we have a show of hands for that? Are we unanimous in that? Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
So on that happy note, thank you very much, Council. I would like to ask Amber Esavaloff from the Downtown Business Association to make a brief presentation.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Amber Sovloff, and I'm the chairperson of the Downtown Business Association. And I've got Jeff Farrow, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, with me, because this has been a joint effort to get Roger Brooks here. So through the rural dividend grant that was applied for by the city in collaboration with the DBA and the BCRCC, Roger Brooks, who is a downtown revitalization specialist, was contracted to formulate a plan of action for our town. Thank you to Community Futures for securing Roger's services and hosting the many workshops in their lab. And thank you to Council and the Mayor for taking time to attend Roger's workshops and presentations. It was a long one. Mr. Brooks has extensive experience turning small, struggling communities into world-class destinations. After spending a week in our town and meeting with many stakeholders, he has presented us with a plan consisting of 46 action items to be carried out over the next 3 years. Thanks to Les Johnson, Roger's presentations were recorded and are available online for anyone who is interested to watch. Businesses are very motivated by Roger's recommendations for revitalization. We have started with some beautification on Market Avenue. The Source is redoing their fountain. The Davis building ripped off their outdated signs off the front of the building, which is awesome. Time and Plate has spruced up their patio area. We've added some planters to our business and many more things to come downtown. We're organizing a work bee to fill planters for the storefronts for any business that wishes to participate. So far, everyone who is open is excited to have planters. There's 30 that needs to be filled, and we're hoping to be able to contact the rest of the businesses to see if there's more interest. The Chamber is sponsoring the printing of wide format photos taken by Peter Collaz to go into vacant windows downtown until the remediation work is completed. The first building is the old Yaki Jackie space. They're beautiful, they're up, go check it out. The Davis building will be next up, hopefully within the next week. And there are so many people excited for the vision of what Grand Forks will become. I hope to see that the enthusiasm continues and that Council is excited to take on this task with us to make sure that Grand Forks is great. We're meeting on Wednesday with the Rural Dividend Advisory Committee to go over Roger's plan, to assign tasks and figure out next steps. As far as I'm aware, we'll be presenting to Council at the July 15th Committee of the Whole.
If you want.
Looking at now.
We've heard that the stop sign recommended on 2nd and Market has had an assessment. Is that correct?
We had the BC Insurance here reviewing a number of things, and we asked them to pay special attention to that because of the need to deal with it as quickly as possible. So we have asked for a special report on that corner.
thank you. It's a safety concern for sure, so that's much appreciated. Okay, do you have any other questions for either?
I hear you have a party on the 20th of July, is that the date?
The events manager that was...
Erin?
Yeah, Erin. She's planning party in the streets for July 20th from 5 until 11. Is that correct? We're meeting with her tomorrow so that she can update us on the plan so far and so that we can organize volunteers and supports to make sure that that's a success.
Exactly. Further, Councillor Thompson?
I just want to compliment the DPA and the businesses, John Zibin in particular, what he's doing to his business, to the rest of the community that has put planters out, and to Jack for taking all those ugly signs off. I'm sorry, Jack, I know we're good friends, but they were ugly. And I'm really excited. I can't believe I sat there for 6+ hours. Yeah, over some time, but it was. I was just amazed at the ideas that came out of that, and I'm really excited to see our city moving forward, particularly after what we all suffered last year.
Councillor Corlick.
Well, congratulations to both DBA and the Chamber. The initiative to put the photos and posters in the windows is terrific. I saw some this morning, and I think they look great. And just having, action happening. I think that's so cool. In fact, that the Source is doing the thing about the patio and the planters are going in, I think it's great, and I really, truly hope the enthusiasm continues. It's important to all of us. So thank you very much for your...
Councillor Zelinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got 3 different issues. But the first one is we'll deal with the Roger Brooks. And I enjoyed the sessions that I attended. What I would like to propose to council is 2 resolutions, sort of long-range planning and put more work on staff.
Hijacking the fact that we're still in council reports.
Yeah, so I'm reporting on Roger. So I guess what the first resolution is that we direct staff to include a budget of some sort for 2020 to mow the south ditch from the regional district building all the way to OK Tire. So that's an entrance into our community that hasn't been maintained as we do in front of the schools and all the way into town. That, again, we'll have a chance to look at it at budget time, but just a direction that they can, when they do that, that they include that into the work plan. So if I don't get a seconder, Mr. Mayor.
Which is not unusual.
That's right.
Okay, Councillor Thompson seconds it. We actually do have a motion on the floor. Well, we're in council reports, rather. Right, so...
I haven't moved to receive them.
No, we haven't moved to receive them, so, okay, we accept this motion. Could you repeat what you're asking here in the motion?
That staff provide us budget numbers and for discussions in 2020 to maintain the boulevards from the regional district office and, sorry, I don't know the street, all the way to Cal Tire.
So you're asking them to cost it for us?
Yes, and then we can make a decision at budget time, but again, it's
That's the 21st. Yeah.
Okay, I understand the motion. And comment, Council?
Great, thank you.
No problem with that. All those in favor? Carried. And your second motion?
And my second motion is on that same line is we have in the budget $25,000 for an electrical master plan. I would like to give staff direction to make sure that in that master plan that we get rid of the utility poles from 2nd Street through to OK Tire. What I would like to see is the north side of the highway. Right now we're butchering the trees because of the utility lines. And I would like to see that not happen and we have a nice boulevard going through our city.
So is this similar to your last motion? You want them to cost it and bring the cost back to it?
Well, hopefully that it's included in the master plan, the electrical master plan, whenever it's created, but it is in the budget, and so it's just an indication of we'd like to see this issue tackled, that's all.
I'll second that.
Okay, you have a seconder and open for discussion. Councillor Mosley.
Mayor, are we, where are we with second market? Is there we direct, it is being analyzed, right? But we haven't done any costing of any improvements to that intersection? Is that correct?
We asked for a report on it.
Right.
In terms of the options and the target, the purpose of the idea of the four-way stop was to slow traffic down and to improve shopping.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm a little lost.
Speaking of Councillor
Zelinski's
motion
is keeping more work on staff, but I certainly support the intent of further beautification. Mr. Brooks was very impressed with our tree-lined highway. In fact, of many things that he was stating about, he was certainly impressed with the beauty of the natural beauty of Grand Forks,
right,
and many of the features of the city. So I would support Councillor Zelinski in trying to improve.
Mr. Drexler.
I just got a message from the IT manager from the school district, just so council knows the city's fiber is also on there. So this isn't just a simple ditch the poles, that this would be not too cheap, I'm guessing.
Okay, but I think Councillor Zelinski's intention here is to cost it, and if it's beyond our scope in terms of cost, then we can look for other solutions to the problem. Am I putting words in your mouth?
No, not at all, Mr. Mayor. It's electrical master plan. I don't know if the dollars will be attached to anything in there, but as long as the long-term goal, and it may take 25 or 50 years, but that we have no utility poles up and down Central to make sure we don't butcher the trees on the north side. And as a fellow that did it, linemen cut trees for power lines, not for beautification, as you probably noticed.
Okay, and I think it's a reasonable request at this point that we cost it and look at that at future beautification. Motion is on the floor. All those in favor? Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Zelinski?
Yes, two other things, Mr. Mayor. So I guess I have to apologize. Saturday was the very first time I attended a baseball game at James Donaldson Park. And I want to give a shout out to all the people that keep that Grand Forks Invitational Ball Tournament going. All the volunteers and especially the sponsors. I am so impressed with the corporate sponsorship in this community. It's amazing, and everybody should be commending themselves. I'd also like to give a big shout out to Granby Dental, Tracy Tambosa, and Tabasco. Okay. Sorry, Tracy. And I think the lady I talked to this morning was Heather at the front desk. I thought I saw that. So we have a couple billets, and one of them is the catcher for the Cuban team, and he lost the filling just recently. And Tracy was able to get him in there, get him fixed up, and on behalf of myself, since he's at my place, and the pitchers, the last thing you want is a catcher that's grumpy. So I thank Tracy very much for that.
Yeah, it's exciting. The baseball tournament's on today. We're having their official opening on Wednesday.
So the last thing I have, Mayor, is more of a question than anything. Is we know BC Housing is doing developments in our community. I would like an update on the transitional house and the landscaping around that. We were promised a fence, we were promised bushes in the development, and I don't see them happening. And
the low-income family unit?
No, it's the transitional house, which has been there for a while, and I don't know why it's been there. Yes.
Okay.
So I'd like some idea of when those things will actually be completed. Thank you.
All right, we'll add that to questions for BC Housing. Council reports. Councillor Corlick?
Thank you. I attended Roger Brooks' workshop as well. It was really informative, and I really liked seeing the response from everybody and all the people that were participating. I think that was terrific, so well done. On the car show and market, I think it was a great success. I agree with you. It was well attended and turned out to be a great day all the way around, so that was a good thing too. On the other hand, I also went to, I didn't go to Roger Brooks on Thursday afternoon because I had another meeting to go to. So I went to the Boundary Museum, and they're struggling for staffing. They need students, they have funding for students, no applications, no interest. They're really struggling. And they also need a full-time person, so it makes putting pressure on the museum to keep working and doing things up to full speed. So I wish them well, and that they are looking for employees. So just to keep it going, and it's a valuable asset to our community as well. So I think we need to.
Related but unrelated, we have a grant at our child care center for a student this summer, and we cannot find
Interesting
one.
problem.
Yeah, it's just.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I also attended COP, so Citizens on Patrol meeting on Wednesday night. And again, that was an interesting thing. The reporter was there, it was great. Thanks, good to see you. But just listening to their conversation, it was interesting to me in the fact that it was a full house. They had, I don't know, over 20 some odd people there, which is pretty good for a meeting. And so they are keeping up their patrols, and their concerns, of course, is the warming center. And they are monitoring speeds throughout the community at different locations on different days. So that's an interesting thing they're doing too. Yeah, so they're working hard at patrolling and things. They were surprised though that the van had been moved to the RCMP station. So they were looking for it one day when they were going on patrol and couldn't find it. So it was there. So yeah, different things. But as a whole, I think they're doing really well. And that's my report, and again, well done.
Okay, further council reports. None. Can I have a motion to accept council reports? Councillor Mazen, Councillor Krog, all those in favor? Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
And I'm going to forego the report from the regional district. We have a meeting on Thursday, and the only thing that really stuck out to me was the code of conduct that the regional district is putting into place. They worked tirelessly on it now for 6 months, and we're putting forward a code of conduct, which I'll get a copy of and we can take a look at it. They're responding to the fact that this will be a provincial requirement fairly quickly for all of the local governments.
We were going to have a discussion on Second Street development.
Is that not before it?
Before you know.
Oh, I'm sorry, it is. I skipped it to my regional district report. All right, back it up to, since I have no report, to the discussion of the Second Street development. I have a bit of news in terms of the BC Housing's latest. We had Mr. Drexler speak to them, and it looks like the date has been set back on that project to September. And further, this is on the table for comment by council. There was a request by 2 councillors to put it on there, so I'll open it for comment. Councillor Thompson.
Well, I was one of the 2 councillors that asked to have it put on the agenda. It's abundantly clear that the community doesn't want that facility located. I'm thinking they don't want it anywhere in the city. BC Housing has been less than transparent on what that facility will look like. They told council, the last council, that it was going to be the 34 units, 1 bedroom. 12 of which would be for the those with addiction issues. And it was going to be blocked off and separated from the remaining units would be available to people low income, handicapped, that maybe didn't have transportation and the like. Now I'm confused because we've heard nothing more from them. They haven't come forward to anybody to say what this proposal is going to be. What do we as a council do? How do we support our community that doesn't want it? The downtown, Roger Brooks said in his presentation that he did not want, or he did not believe that a facility of that nature belonged at the east entrance into our city. And we do not have the resources available to us, either policing, medically, other professionals that would be dealing with these. We don't have them here. And I know for a fact that Interior Health did not, they may have talked to the mental health unit, but they did not talk to the local physicians. They did not talk to the local hospitals. And this is causing them great concern and stress. So what do we as a council do? Do we take them to court? Do we meekly go away and let them do whatever they want? I've got grave concerns, and I know I have said that they can come in their body as the provincial government, and they can do what they want, but I think we have to try and do something to support the members of our community.
Further comment on 2nd Street, Councillor Zielinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take a little bit different angle on this. So council works in 3 different ways, either through resolution, through policy, or through bylaw. And these are the things that give staff direction, gives the city direction, and sort of sets the tone on whatever the topic is. So I'd like to propose a resolution just to be very clear of where this council, the 7 members, thinks where this issue is going. So, and again, whether or not I get seconder is another story. But I'd like to make the motion that the City Council of Grand Forks supports a 34-unit supportive housing at the location of 2nd Street and Central. And make that a motion and see where the votes go and see what direction we can go. Thank you.
Seconder for that motion.
I'll second it for discussion.
Councillor Moslin.
Can I propose an amendment?
You can do what you like in terms of amendments.
Strike the location.
I think that's a good place to start. So amendment to say that the City Council of Grand Forks support a 34-unit supportive housing facility within our community.
And the seconder for that is comfortable with that?
No.
You are not? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, just that, yeah, I think we're dealing with that right now. 2nd Street, so that's why it's identified, and there are specifics there. If you water it down, which is what'll happen anywhere in the community, and then are we talking city limits, or are we talking the community of Grand Forks? Are we talking, so I second it to see it go to a vote of which councillors would support the building being
on 2nd Street.
Yeah, and then take it from there.
So do we,
with that explanation, and Mr. Mayor, I'll go back to the original motion to get it on the floor and see where we go. Thank you.
And Councillor Krog, motion stands then as a seconder. It's on the floor.
Yeah. Do we want to
Councillor
read out the
Martin.
motion?
Okay, you know, unfortunately, Mayor, I'm kind of driven split here. I do believe there is a need for this facility in the community. I don't believe, I am a little alarmed by more than a little, about the tone of the discussion around it. People have this building all cross-imaged with other facilities. For one thing, they have a cross-imaged with a tent city. I think it's a tent city. It is not a tent city. It is the opposite of a tent city. It is structured, it is a building, it is supervised, there's cameras everywhere. It is John Howard Society run it, and it's just one rung above a prison. Anyhow, so it is not a tent city, nor is it a warming center. A warming center you can walk into. You can't walk into this building. In fact, that's the reason I don't like it at Second and Central. It's because it's closed. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the people who ever eventually get to reside there as tenants will probably pass a motion, as they have in Kelowna, not to have any visitors enter the building. So you're going to find yourself in the 4-story closed residential apartment for contingent care on the corner of 2nd and Central, which is being identified as, a potential gateway, literally, for the city. On the other, so those are my reasons for not supporting that location. I do support the facility in our town. People say there's no services. Yeah, well, it's coming with a $2 million salary. Hey guys, you're starting to shut down the mill. You really want to overlook $2 million worth of salary? Especially the kind of people that they're going to bring with them. The people who are working in Kelowna in these buildings were nurses, social workers, a maintenance crew. They were young professionals. Wow, okay, isn't that what we want? Anyhow, so I don't believe that it's a low barrier, because you're going to have to be interviewed by a committee to get in. And they're going to screen you for probably down for first for success. That is, they're going to want people who are going to make it work. They're not going to accept people who aren't going to make it work. Okay, so there is, there is support services attached to it. It is slated to be run by a local nonprofit, our Boundary Family Support Services. We're, going to increase their capacity. I have a hard time with people get very emotional when they think there's going to be needles everywhere. No, that's not what it looks like. That's not what it is. So I'm sorry. Even some of my most liberal friends are adamantly opposed to this thing, which is a response to a need. Sure, go. You don't have to look far to identify, yeah, we need this. We should definitely take it. I am just so saddened that it ended up being that 2nd and Central guy. If they were gonna try to make it appealing to me, the first floor would be commercial. It would be, I don't know, a bike shop, maybe a coffee shop. I don't know. It would be commercial. It would be open. It would be publicly accessible, and the upstairs floors, would be sort of cordoned off, as they are in one of the buildings downtown in Kelowna. Anyhow, so that's my, if your motion was meant to flush us out, consider me flushed, okay? I support the motion. I find the argument, many of the arguments against it absolutely uninformed at best. Okay? And my deepest regret is that when we went ahead with the 70th proposal, you know, we have cut ourselves off. If we were to do something, I would like to go back to BC Housing, put some more proposals on their table. How about these lots? We've already shown that we're willing to pay, that we are willing to ante up reimbursement for 2nd Street, which I think is never going to be a waste of money. That land is just too valuable, maybe even for potential revitalization purposes. Anyhow, it's not a loss. But we showed our indication that we're willing to pay, and we're willing to play. They have shown their willingness to negotiate. They changed the original design. We moved them off their position of no other location. Right? And I'm hoping that we could move them off their timeline. And, you know, I believe we should continue to engage with BC Housing. We need to, okay, you didn't like that proposal? We didn't like it. Let's put some more on the table. Anyhow, that's my position, Mayor. Thank you.
And keeping in mind that we did sign off certain things in the memorandum of understanding, Councillor Krog and Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, just a couple of comments in response to Councillor Osland. Uninformed at best, totally agree with, because nobody's been given any information about what the actual structure, the end product is going to be. We've been told this, we've been told that, haven't seen anything on paper. It's not going to be run by John Howard. They do not have a $2 million a year budget. And we just heard from 2 groups that can't find staff. Right? That they're having a hard time finding staff. So the jobs, and I totally agree that we need it. If you can show me, we need it. So where's the pit count? Where's the idea? And the craziest thing is that the need that was expressed by members of the community was to do with the specific individuals that are out there right now. And they're in the warming center or still camping. And they're not following any of those rules. So if we go through the process, as you say they may go through, none of those people are going to qualify. So what happened to our need, right? We need to find stability for those people, not other people, right? So, yeah, and I support the going to a vote to see where we actually stand. Do we want it on second? It's not whether we want it, it's do you want it on 2nd Street?
Yeah. Councillor Thompson.
Just a question through you to our CEO. When BC Housing first made their inquiry, was the old Wildlife Hall up on 2nd ever proposed to them as an option?
Your Worship, I think the only time the Wildlife Hall became a place for discussion was when we had the flood. We were looking for lands to dedicate for temporary housing in different pieces, and I think the Wildlife Center was one of the ones that was up for discussion. The council said that they would dedicate that land for temporary housing should we need to have it up there.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I was, it has been brought up before, and it was brought up when the MAPS project was being put together, past Whispers of Hope and all that. The council of the day looked at buying the building for future development, riverfront property, and it just so happened that it matched what the groups were asking for. The wildlife hall at that time was vacant. It wasn't leased out, which it is now. And that was my suggestion, is we already own this property, so why would I pay money to buy another property down on the riverside? Right? So it has been brought up before, but since that time it's been leased and renovated by a church, so you can't just be going in and getting people.
Your worship, one of the biggest challenges with wildlife is that we did do kind of a prelim check on what the infrastructure is to actually service something that has a fair amount of units, and it likely would be upwards to about $1 million because of the lift. And so it is not the cheapest piece as far as infrastructure goes.
I remember that, yes.
Yeah, so it's about $1 million to put the infrastructure up in that area.
So the vote is on the floor, but remember, this is really an attempt at this point, I think, to again look for some alternative to 2nd Street, which I think is a violation of what we agreed to with BC Housing in our Memorandum of Understanding. So I'm not going to interfere with the vote, but telling you that we did promise them that we wouldn't put new roadblocks up in their way. Did we not?
Never said that.
You didn't sign it?
No, it didn't say that.
Okay, well, a matter of interpretation, we can ask for that later.
Yeah.
Are you ready for a vote on this?
So, because it's been a while.
Yeah, but please
Rerun it, which is, do you support that?
Do you support 2nd Street housing?
Oh, what's the resolution?
Support housing on 2nd Street?
That Grand Forks City Council supports a 34 unit supportive housing facility at 2nd Street and Central.
Thank you.
That's the
But is
motion.
it all supported housing? Okay.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, Council.
Further to that discussion, Mr. Mayor, again, just to try and clarify where this council is going, I would like to put another motion on the floor, if possible, just to clarify at least my position, and it's been my position since day one. So I was wondering if staff could put up the core commercial zone up on the board, up on the overhead, please. So, Mr. Mayor, you know, all 7 of us bring our experiences to the table. We bring the knowledge we collect over the years to deal with whatever issues in front of us. One of the things I've learned over the years is the difference between negligence and gross negligence. Negligence is things happen, things go sideways, and even with best intentions, things can go sideways. And especially at a board level, at this level, we have board insurance to protect us from that. That board insurance will not do anything if it's gross negligence. And the way I've been explaining gross negligence is if you know better and you do something contrary to what you know, that isn't gross negligence and that isn't defendable by any insurance.
Getting to your point.
So having said that, if we put the uses of core commercial up on the board, I don't believe that 2nd Street is zoned properly for the project described. So even though that we don't support, in theory, the project, I think it's more intense that that project, as defined in the letter of intent that we all read, does not fit the zoning of core commercial.
So what's your motion, Council?
My motion is that a 34-unit supportive housing building, as described in the letter of intent, does not fit the zoning of core commercial.
And the seconder for that motion? This is a motion?
Yes.
I mean, to me, it was a statement.
Okay, the motion is that the City of Grand Forks Council
Inform BC Housing.
No, I don't even want to inform BC Housing, just the fact that the 34-unit supportive housing, as described in the letter of intent that we had, does not fit the core commercial zone. Thank you.
Okay, I guess that's a motion.
Yeah.
And a seconder. Councillor Studley. Can I ask planning for a response to this particular motion that seems to be in front of us?
Without having time to prepare, Mayor, I don't feel comfortable with a response. I wasn't expecting to speak on this subject.
Neither was I, so thank you. All right, so the motion is on the floor. Speaking to the motion, Councillor.
I just want to sort of explain what some of council's concerns are, and the way it's cut off now is actually perfect for the explanation. So right there, it says the following uses and no other are permitted. So that's your primary use. And none of those have anything to do really with housing, except for maybe hotels, motels, but that's not part of the project we're talking about. So there's no housing there. So that's your primary use. And then when you scroll down, you get to accessory use, and that's where housing sort of comes in with the apartment units. So even talking with BC Housing, they said their primary use is housing. So in order for this to work, their primary use would have to be one of those top things, which aren't apartments. Their primary use would have to be offices. We'd have to see that that was their main focus, was office space or one of those other uses. But so far we haven't seen that. They've even said themselves primary use is apartments. So that's one of our main concerns with this, the way everything is.
So, Councillor, I think you're way off the mark in bringing this up as a last-minute attempt again to stop the Second Street development. I think it clearly violates our obligations to the Memorandum of Understanding. I'm not going to have further comment. I'm going to ask for a question here on your motion. I'm going to vote against it, but I think that your decision flies in the face of the decision that was made by our planning department, which clearly stated that the only issue outstanding in terms of the variance requirement for Second Street was the parking, which still is out there. But I think this attempt really speaks poorly to us as a council. I'm not happy with it at all. And I think it really violates the intent of our agreement with BC Housing. And no further comments. I'd like to call the motion. So can we clarify the motion?
So what I pieced together, that the City of Grand Forks acknowledges that I used acknowledges, maybe that works, maybe you have a better word, that the 34-unit supported housing as described in the letter of intent does not fit the core commercial zoning.
Okay.
The definition of core commercial zoning.
Ready for the question? All those in favor? I'm sorry.
I think that the intent was that the City of Grand Forks Council.
Yeah.
Council, and I think it's missing just a clarification.
Right. Ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And moving on. Next item of business, unless I missed something again, is the meeting request with Premier Horgan and cabinet members at UBCM. You read the expectations on that, and I don't know whether we're ready at this point in time to respond in detail to this, but we do have some opportunity here if we want to fill in the blanks, it looks like. Other than that, I think we need to get it together in terms of what we're talking to them about before we ask which ministers we want to talk to. So I'm not sure how to dispose of this at this point other than to not make a resolution and for us to give feedback.
So Mr. Mayor, we do need a resolution to take this into the intake process for UBCM.
To make the time frame?
Yes. So if council wants to discuss what they want to talk about, then we can figure out which ministry this would go to. So I know Councilor Korlick asked to potentially speak with the Minister for Municipal Affairs and Housing, which would be Mr. Robinson, as well as the Ministry of Health, which would be Minister Dix.
Okay, further
Right.
comments?
But it's up to council on this
Yeah.
as a whole.
But, yes, it's interesting that the Minister of Housing is not going to be easy to schedule by the looks of it. Anyhow, but I also wanted to, would it be possible to meet with the ministry responsible that would, and I wasn't too sure who we were going to be working with the flood mitigation works. Because I figure by September, we might be hard at it.
We still have Jennifer Rice to lead us in terms of who we connect with and where we're at with that process.
So we should ask her advice.
I would ask her at this point. We'll be,
If there's a deadline
Yeah.
for UBCM, I really think that we should be, together with maybe a BFR representative or somebody, flood mitigation works.
Can we meet the deadline, Mr. Drexler, without giving you any more specifics here tonight?
Well, so what I'm hearing maybe to talk to forest, land, natural resources, and so on, whatever minister that is, I don't know right now. Which is fine. Like I'll sort that out after the scenes, and to talk about the flood mitigation potentially. Housing is obviously a big topic, like we've just noticed. So Minister Robinson, she did take separate schedules from the other ministers. So there's always room because everybody wants to. Well, I shouldn't say always, but everybody always tries to get to see her. So she keeps a complete separate setup there for appointments. And Premier Horgan is usually a very common one too.
Go ahead, sorry.
Just thinking about the resolutions we took forward to UBLG, one being
Judy Darcy.
Judy Darcy. Well, no, it's actually the Minister of Health, because Judy Darcy doesn't have any money to fund the rehab and detox. That comes under the Ministry of Health. And so I think that is an issue that we really need to push the Minister of Health, because they've got to get some facilities into smaller and rural communities. If facilities like what BC Housing is proposing is successful, these people don't have the money to pay for their rehabilitation. So that is something that we're going to have to really move forward on. And with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, I think it's Councillor Mosman, your resolution that says they need to come to a community and discuss before they just make these wonderful pronouncements. So those are two things that I'm thinking of that we took forward to ADJOURNMENT.
Councillor Zelinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. More of a question than anything, and I'm going to suggest that it's Premier Horgan that we talked to, but I understand he has a lot of history in the Columbia Basin Trust, and I'm wondering if this is an opportunity to chat with him about that. And I don't have any history, so that I'm asking for him.
I do.
Is he a good person to talk to about that, or yay or nay?
I'm not holding out a lot of hope at this point that we could get anywhere with that, and we would certainly need a presentation to the Prime Minister, Premier, which I'm not sure that we're ready to produce.
The other one I'm thinking about is interior health. Do we want to meet with them about their lack of communication with council on services that may be brought in or may be removed? Just putting that out there if anybody else has got an appetite for that.
meeting with ministries for health and stuff, but there's different health districts, IJ, that type of thing. So that's more local. So you need to talk to the actual minister. So
Minister Valls.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, okay, because the other thing that concerns me is the interior health area, is it too big? It's a huge, huge,
oh
huge
yeah,
area.
totally.
And are we getting the attention that we should have?
Sir.
Yeah.
Rural BC doesn't get the attention it deserves. It's a
Well, then
vast-
let's make noise.
Okay.
So, do you have a list of suggested ministers that would allow us to meet the time frame in terms of asking for appointments?
Yeah, the appointment ask isn't hard. It's more like we have to prep some, at least a couple topics to talk about. It's about 250 words we have
It's
to
embarrassing to go in and not have your material together. And
Exactly, and that needs to happen first because I got to submit it at the same time as I do the appointments.
There's work here to be done by council to define what the issues are we're wanting to bring forward.
We don't want to take the surprise out of it.
When does this have to
Oh,
be
by
in?
the way.
The absolute deadline is usually July 21st, I think, on this one. But with Kevin away, myself away, Diane on holidays, we're trying to streamline this process instead of doing it last minute. But I've heard enough about, discussion on flood mitigation is always a good thing. Also, especially if for some reason the funding does come through, there's always a thank you to hire people. It's good and welcome. And definitely hearing something on BC housing with talking to them maybe a little bit more through Minister Robinson about the approaches. The AKBLG resolutions, I think I can drum up 3 to 4 good topics to the various ministries. I hear Minister Robinson, I hear Premier Horgan, Minister Dix. This sounds like the key people here on this.
Is Donaldson, is he still the Minister of Federal? Forest lands? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll need to look up who it is for Premier.
Okay.
But yeah, I have enough. This is good for me. If council is okay with that list, that I just...
It doesn't appear we need a motion on this matter. No. It's feedback. Okay, moving forward into bylaws. So the first bylaw is the request for the first 3 readings to our amendment to the financial plan. And would you like to speak to that, CFO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is just the amendment to the 2018 numbers and the 2018 to 2022 financial plan, so last year's financial plan. And the reason that we're asking for this is just to ensure that we're compliant with our requirements under the community charter. We did have additional expenses and revenues that went over what was in the original budget. So it just made all the adjustments consistent with the financial statements.
Thank you. Can we put this motion on the floor for the first 3 readings? Councillor Kulinski, second Councillor Thompson. Further discussion? You've seen most of this material before. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And staying on the microphone, we have the next item, which is the reserve fund establishment. This is very interesting and I think worthwhile move by our CFO. Get it up here. So council gives first 3 readings to this reserve fund establishment bylaw. And can I have a motion to that? Councillor Thompson, second, and Councillor Crow. And speaking to it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so we have several reserve fund bylaws on the books right now, and for administrative efficiency, we'd like to combine most of them into one single bylaw. The actual conditions haven't changed. They're just, it's just that the separate bylaws are all being included as one. I did make a couple of changes since this went to the Committee of the Whole. As we discussed then, I've added the Transportation Infrastructure Reserve, which is another option that we can use our cash in lieu of parking funds for. And the other thing I did was there's a capital fund, capital reserve fund, which is not specific to any of the specific funds, and then we have the separate general, electrical, etc. Reserve funds. So I've actually taken that capital reserve fund out of this consolidated bylaw. It'll still remain in its own separate bylaw, and then we'll look at the idea plan would be to look at it at the end of the year, see how much funding is remaining in there, and then maybe transfer it into these separate capital reserves, the general, electrical, water, and sewer. So it was a little bit ambiguous and confusing to have that capital reserve along with all the other ones. So.
Yeah. Understanding, Councillor Thompson.
But the accounting for what's available in each fund would be on the books. This is just to consolidate them into one place.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, all the reserve funds would still be separate funds, and they're still specific that the purpose for which the funds are used is exactly the same. They're still specific that you can only use the funds in a particular reserve for the purpose for which it was established. Mm-hmm. So the only difference is that it's all consolidated into one bylaw. All the reserves will still be accounted for separately. They're still required to be spent in a specific way, etc. So.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, follow up?
Yes.
You did make a change to the land sales, I believe, though, in reading the document. I wasn't at the Committee of the Whole, and I was not allowed to attend by telephone because that was cut off. I can't say I'm not a person. But you did make a change from the land sales that it could be just for acquisition of land on speculation.
The wording is actually for strategic purposes. In the original bylaw, the land sales reserve was actually quite restrictive in that it was land that was used that was required for a specific capital project, but this gives a little bit more freedom to just purchase land on its own that's strategic.
Yeah, I like that flexibility. You done, Councillor?
Yeah.
Councillor Zelinski?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 3.6, just clarification. So I had thought in our asset management plan that there was a statement saying that any operating reserves from whatever department went into the capital reserve fund. And this basically says that at the end of the year, we'll divvy up any operational surpluses into whatever we or our staff sees fit. So I'm just wondering where those two mesh.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The actual allocation of any surplus would be done through the financial planning process. It wouldn't be just decided by staff, or we would look at it as we go through the budget process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, so I'm confused. So if the sewer department has an operation surplus of $100 at the end of the year, I was under the impression that $100 went into the capital reserve. Are you saying that's not the case?
Mr. Mayor, it's actually determined through, as is mentioned, through the budgeting process and in accordance with our asset management policy. So I mean, there's a difference between a surplus and the actual cash that's available to be transferred into the reserves. I just propose that that's best done during the budgeting process.
So those controls are in council's hands, they're not done at the whim of anyone in accounting. I'm not sure what you're driving at here, Councillor. I think we're getting very straight answers here from our financial officer. I'm understanding her.
Okay, so through the budget process, there is a amount of dollars that goes into capital repairs.
For that department?
For that department. So if the, and just because I know the numbers a little better, the electrical department costs us $760 or so dollars to operate, $760,000 to operate. If during the year it only cost us $500,000 to operate, would that extra $260,000 from the operating budget go into their capital budget, or where would it go?
Okay, and let me answer that one because I'm clear.
Okay.
All right, it would go where we tell it to go because it's in the budgeting process, right? We're not giving up control of deciding whether or not it should get the $100 or whether for some other reason it should be allocated to somewhere else. That's our control in the budgeting process. That's what I'm hearing from finance.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Sounds good?
Yeah, as long as we follow through.
All right. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, Mayor, I just want to confirm that when I look it over, it does look pretty clear. I wanted to figure, my question was how much money in each reserve, but let's just blow right by that. I guess the most significant thing that I could see a change was the land sales reserve fund.
Yes.
And that basically those reserves now could be used to pay any debt remaining in relation to the sold property and or acquisition of land.
Which we could have done before, I thought. This gives us more power to do that. Can I ask?
This is for strategic purposes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's actually a requirement under the community charter, is that if there is debt remaining on land, and then the land sales reserve has to be used to pay off that debt.
The flexibility is that we can make strategic moves with it now. So that's the only change in that. Councilor, you ready for a vote on this matter? It's a nod. Councilor Zelinski.
Motion. Or
did we make a motion?
Yes.
Second motion. We already have it on. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item of business is the vape-free places, smoke and vape-free. Council is being asked for a final reading on the adoption of this bylaw. Can I have that motion? Councilor Zelinski, seconded by Councilor Corlick. And questions, Councilor Zelinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm down at section 3. No person may smoke outdoor public space, park, blah, blah, blah. So my understanding, if I have it right, not necessarily Dick Bartlett Park, but the land that all the rec facilities sit on are not city property.
They are not. That's right.
So anybody can smoke there anytime? Is that what I'm getting at? This is only for lands that we control. That's a certain question.
I don't know whether that's true. Councillor Moslin is the rec commission. Have you talked about smoking there at all?
I believe the intent is to put follow the city's lead there and put up the signs that the city is considering. That is, no smoking, no vaping.
I certainly could clarify that on Thursday of this week.
Yeah, because my understanding is that one jurisdiction can't put bylaws on a particular jurisdiction.
Unless they want to be bylawed.
Well, yeah, but we can't.
Can't force
no smoking in the RDKB period type thing. So
let me clarify with them and bring that back to you.
Okay, thank you.
But it makes sense that it would be consistent for the whole town. Okay, the motion is on the floor. Councilor Zelinski.
Yeah, one last question. Anytime this bylaw gets broken or if there's an offense, are we dealing in it by complaint only or?
Are we going off to
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah, thank you.
You know, with most of our bylaws, it is complaint driven. And we certainly are lacking in terms of enforcement here. To expect us to enforce this strictly is going to be pretty difficult to manage.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The idea was to, more or less with putting the signs up, the public that kind of regulates each other a little bit, hopefully. And yes, if there is multiple complaints about a certain individual, then we could look into it through bylaw enforcement. But the idea would be to more do a public engagement piece around this to be proactive and show the better.
And we are in fact looking for smoking areas that we can designate, and I think that works in terms of businesses as well as the city, that we are beginning to look at those. And I don't want to get into it tonight. There's 2 or 3 that have been suggested for discussion, but we'll see how that develops. But I think our intent is to develop smoking areas where people can designate. Okay. Councillor.
The high school has their designated smoking area. How would this affect that? The high school?
The high school.
Yeah, are they still able to keep that? Should they choose to keep that?
Well, it certainly would be allowed within the way we've written the bylaw.
The question I would have to the school district is if it's minors smoking on the property, that's more my point on this, but they need to do what they need to do.
We've always had that there.
Yes, I know the smoke pit. Not that I ever went. Council, ready for this? This is a pretty dramatic move. This is a bylaw I think will take some work over time, but I think it's worthwhile, and hopefully it'll clean up a lot of areas of the city. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the next item is the amendment to the Parks Spaces bylaw. This is to give final reading, and again, this was to add Massey Park. Can I have that motion for the final reading? Councillor Zelinski, Councillor Krog. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Carried. The next item of business is the 3rd reading of the bylaw that we dealt with this morning. Was it this morning?
This afternoon.
In the hearing, yes. And so what we're being asked to give this is 3rd reading. And I'm asked, did we have any further submissions or anything on this matter after the hearing? No, there was no one at the public hearing. Okay, so the motion here is to give 3rd reading to this bylaw. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Corlick, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next item of business is the rezoning development variance for 75th Avenue. This is a setback, 1st and 2nd reading. This is for 1st and 2nd reading and would move it to public process. You've read the material. Can I have that motion? Councillor Corlick seconded. Councillor Stubing. Discussion? Councillor.
Yes, Your Worship, I guess I'm not opposed to moving this along to public hearing.
Yeah.
I'm expecting that we will hear from the public on it. My concerns is that it's unnecessary density, which we're already pushing the limit of, in a place where there's an empty lot across the street. There's some very tricky zoning immediately to the south, where it's sort of a residential commercial. And then of course there's Highway 3. there's a school right across from it. I am a little apprehensive about access to the new lots, or new lot rather. And I'm just kind of wondering what the necessity is for putting so many buildings or units, I think is the correct word, in a single lot when there are empty lots available close by.
Thank you. And these are the things that we would explore in a public process. And certainly there are some aspects of this that increase housing. And so, you know, there are certainly some attractive features to having more units rather than less. And addressing your concerns, I think we will have an opportunity for a more in-depth look at this location in the hearing process. Ready for a question on this? Do we have it on the floor? I'm sorry. We do? I do that automatically now, I forget. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we have a late item in a request from Councillor Zielinski for a discussion of the warming center, and I acquiesce to Mr. Zielinski about it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, again, as far as social housing or social services in this community, I'm looking forward to a good debate on how it works, where it fits, and I know we've been talking about strategic plan, OCP, and those discussions. Why I bring it forward today is the same thing that the reason I brought 2nd Street for, or talked about 2nd Street, is the process. And that's all I'm talking about is the process. Whether 2nd Street gets rezoned or not, that's another issue. But when I look at light industrial, there is no use other than a watchman's quarters for overnight accommodation. So again, I'd like to put a motion on the floor that the City of Grand Forks support its planning bylaws with light industrial not allowing overnight accommodation other than a watchman quarters, and directing staff to enforce those bylaws. Thank you.
So again, it's kind of convoluted here in terms of what you're asking. You're questioning again the planning department's decision to allow this, and that
Planning didn't allow this.
it was not a contrary to zoning.
They didn't, there was no business license required, and this is a private deal between the owner of the building.
And
they said they were asleep. Pardon?
And what is their legal right to be there?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, maybe we should start again with the light industrial zone up on the board so we can look at the permitted uses. But I can tell you that going through the permitted uses, there is only a use of a watchman's quarter as far as overnight accommodation, and what's been going on there does not comply with our bylaws. And if we don't uphold our own laws, we're on a very slippery slope going forward. And I'm asking council to confirm that light industrial only includes watchman's quarters, and the use at the warming center does not comply with bylaws, and requesting staff to enforce our bylaws.
Councillor Thompson.
When this was first proposed back in, I believe it was December, it was a warming center for the extreme weather, the extreme cold. It is now morphed into a shelter, and I can't support that. You know, you don't mind giving people a hand in those kinds of conditions, but when it morphs into something more than that, that's an abuse. And I felt, quite frankly, I felt threatened by Mr. Kennedy this morning when he indicated that if council did not support the setback that he would require, that it would remain as a warming center / shelter. And I can't support that.
I cannot support it either. I felt the same way, that it wasn't even a bill. It was just a statement, this is going to be, I don't think that's it turned into, as you say, a shelter within 24 hours. It didn't even take a month and people were sleeping there. And that was not the idea for that at all. I mean, the warming center was for cold weather, extreme weather, and usually they close, what, the end of March? And now it's sort of heading at the end of June. So I agree, I cannot support that either. It's just.
So, do we have a second?
Councillor Zelinski had a motion that was not seconded. Councillor Corlick seconds the motion, which, again, to repeat, is to ask city staff to enforce our bylaws in this location.
That's correct. Thank you.
Further comments?
I hope the warming shelter is permitted uses.
No.
Or
Any shelter.
Or actually any, okay, never mind, I can't say that. There's no retail. There's wholesale. But there's no retail.
Ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor?
Adjournment?
Actually, we have questions from the public.
Oh, sorry, sir.
I did have one question I wanted to ask. And that is, there's been a proposed or an invitation extended to the Whispers of Hope and BC Housing to meet. Has that been extended? That invitation has been sent out? And do we have a proposed date when that can occur?
No, we don't, and I'm discussing it with Daniel in terms of who we best speak to in this matter, especially with the developments over the last few days. But it has not been forgotten that council was wanting that contact to be established.
Just for council's information, I've played phone tag back and forth with BC Housing over the last week and a half. So we've managed to talk once for 2 minutes about, and that was it. So.
All right, we're down to questions from the public, which can include anything that was on. Oh, I'm sorry, we have another councillor speaking.
Yes, is there anything from the camera that we want to release?
I don't think we have that prepared for tonight.
From last meeting on?
Yes, that was the details of the 70th Street process and what council went through, but I doubt if we have that at this point ready for release this evening.
Yeah, no, I was going to include it with the next council agenda, so it's in the
quite
package.
extensive. It's several pages of documents that need to be prepared, but we are going to and did agree to release that to the public. So that was just the step-by-step process by which council tried to move the project from 2nd Street to 70th Street. Okay, questions from the public. We have Mr. Johnson with his hand up.
I'm just listening to the last motion there. The last council meeting, they were talking about the possibility of delegitimizing some places downtown because the OCP had not tracked with, or the paperwork hadn't tracked the OCP for downtown density, et cetera. Right? Okay, so when I was listening to Councillor Zelinski's motion to get staff to enforce the bylaws, I'm curious, the Polnikoff store, does anybody live there? Is that in the industrial zone? Are you then by basically forcing them to do something different than what they're doing right now? I'm just curious about that.
Polnikoff store up on...
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure the yoga is going in on the first floor now, but I'm not sure if anybody actually lives in the building. So.
Well, there were apartments up there.
Yeah, it used to be apartments last I saw it 20 years ago.
Pardon me?
It was apartments.
But it's not now.
Yeah,
I'm sure it is.
checked it.
I don't even know who owns it. Just
Well, it's just that if you...
You're saying that other places may be in violation of a density rule?
Well, if you're going to basically cause the staff to go and look at places where people are actually living overnight and they aren't just caretakers in that zone. I'm pretty sure, based on the fact that it's got industrial on both sides of it and it's on that side of the road, it probably is in that zone. So are you delegitimizing their occupation of that facility by taking that action? That's my question.
Right. I can't answer that, and I may be able to discuss it with staff at another time.
Okay, that's it.
Further from the gallery.
I just wanted to clarify, like the school district in our last month's meeting, we passed a policy about smoking and vaping and tobacco, that it's not allowed on any school district Bridge-1 property.
Okay, we're
On or off.
perpetuating a myth.
Yeah. During or after school hours.
Okay, there is no more smoking.
Sorry.
Where did all the butts come from?
There was a recommendation from Mr. Brooks while he was here that the 2nd Street is a high traffic area and somewhat pertaining to the stop sign on 2nd and Market. We noticed while having lunch at the Spoon how many city vehicles drive back and forth down 2nd Street, and he recommended that the alternate route over through the highway and over the industrial bridge would be a preferred route for city staff vehicles and dump trucks, other vehicles accessing the industrial area, because it would have less traffic through the downtown core that is not stopping for downtown business. As well, it would reduce noise on that intersection, especially being that there's the Wooden Spoon, which is an eatery, and it's unnecessary noise with the traffic that should use alternate routes.
I'm wondering whether from an environmental point that is more driving to get to where they're going. Is that taking that route a short route?
We would have to look at it. We can discuss it with the managers at Public Works. And
right. Can we bring that up then to Public Works and see if there are some things that we can do with routing?
Yeah, there is a sign there on the highway that shows it's not a truck route.
Yeah.
So maybe that's already a policy in place, it just isn't followed.
That's for semi trucks and like big stuff. Yeah, if they're coming with their vacuum truck or so and they have to do something in that area. I don't know where the benefit is in terms of pollution, air pollution, and usage of fuel versus driving through town. I'd have to check it out.
Our CAO.
Just a point, Your Worship, understandable for larger trucks, but if you have smaller trucks and you're now paying employees extra time to drive around in a different area, then doing it smoking in the quickest time. So it's just a point I wanted to make that it does cost money to move trucks.
Okay. One of the other things, Amber, that was suggested by ICBC was that we narrow the whole of 2nd Street down that has a calming effect. That is a very effective way of slowing people down on 2nd Street. So that's another thing that's on the table, a recommendation from them.
Yeah, that intersection really is quite a concern.
Right. So we will have a special report on that fairly quickly from the ICBC people, and we expect to make that public. Further from the gallery? Yes.
After this afternoon's meeting, there was discussion about maybe hosting a meeting about cannabis stores generally.
Yeah, I was set back by the number of people who were expressing concern about cannabis in general in our community and the warming center issue. And I would initiate contact with BC Housing in terms of them and their promise to sit down. But the issue of cannabis is kind of our bailiwick. I'm wondering whether or not we couldn't have a separate meeting to discuss with the community the growth of the cannabis industry here, whether that would be worth settling as a separate issue with the community. But there was, both those things were quite mixed up in the meeting today. It was highly emotional and I didn't cry. Not true.
In as much as in as much as each application comes to council for approval prior to, and we had 3 that have come before council that have moved forward, 3 applications, and 1 was turned down. I think with the resolutions that council passed tonight, may give some comfort to our citizens that.
Smoking one.
Oh, are you talking the smoking one? No, I thought you were talking about the retail sales.
I'm a bit confused. I'm sorry, I interrupted you in the middle of your thought.
Well, no, that's fine. If it's strictly relative to where it's being sold, and that was what I got from some of the comments today, that we don't need any cannabis retail sales in Grand Forks area. But each application comes to the city, and it's dealt with a public process and the ability for the public to comment. So, frankly, I don't see any real purpose in holding a separate meeting on this particular issue.
Okay, that's interesting. Councillor Zelinski.
So, Mr. Mayor, I thought from your comments you're more talking about the economic development approach as far as how the cannabis industry can.
I wanted to expand it to that, to explain to the community all of the initiatives that are going on, the businesses that have moved in, the fact that our council is taking an entrepreneurial approach here, which says that if you want to open a store and compete with the other stores open here, then we let you do that because it's your money. So we're not limiting the number of stores, but there are some exciting things out there happening in cannabis, and I thought we might turn some of those people to understand the economic potential of this.
Is council aware of some of those initiatives?
I hope you are, yeah.
Refresh your memory.
The Christina Lake Cannabis Company, a large operation. We also have Destiny, which you're aware of at the old forestry building. We have been approached by various cannabis companies to look at clustering in our community in terms of edibles and extracts. So those are all things that are in process in terms of potential opportunities for Grand Forks from an economic development standpoint. Are you refreshed? No, well, they are things we've discussed, but we haven't put a lot of emphasis on it. Further from the gallery, Matt?
Yeah, I need to ask, with the park bylaw being passed,
yes,
or the amendment being passed, previously you guys had discussed having staff look at other areas of city property that would be acceptable for or suitable for people to sleep at night. And I'm just wondering, have you guys determined any of those places?
I don't believe we have. We have not. It's all highly controversial in terms of any site where we might actually give any kind of permission for people to camp. I think that comes down to that. On the other hand, from a legal standpoint, we're not supposed to be kicking people out of our parks if we don't give them any reasonable alternative of a place to sleep. Well, and we are at this point responsible for Crown land. Let's be clear on that. That's been hammered out here by our staff and support people, that even though people are camping on areas that are considered Crown land, it's still the city's direct responsibility. They're not. We're not going to get support from other levels of government for that.
Okay.
Even though it's their responsibility.
Even though, yeah. Yes.
Well, in the park bylaw, aren't they allowed to camp from a certain time to a certain time at night,
yes,
to a certain time in the morning? They have to be gone.
But they're not supposed to camp at all in the parks we've designated. And we've designated every park.
Yeah.
So we've kind of trapped those people into camping on what is not city land identified as park. There are some areas around where they might find that, or Crown land. we're not doing well with this, but we're not doing any worse than a lot of other communities struggling with this problem of rough camping. Yes.
With the decision to go ahead and notify, I guess, the building owners of where the warming center is, and that will effectively, I imagine, have it shut down, and those people will need to leave. The services that it was providing are no longer going to be there, and I'm just wondering, you know, are you guys all okay with them just dispersing wherever and having nothing be contained or addressed in the manner that maybe it was? Maybe it wasn't ideal, maybe there were some issues, but at least there was something.
Yes.
And I, for one, thought the warming center was a success in some ways. I know people don't agree with me, but I do have to say things as a matter of integrity, not to seek popularity. It does matter as to how we treat these people, and as I was saying, that the warming center to me was a success because, as far as I know, there haven't been the overdoses that have happened very frequently, not that long ago. Sorry, I do get emotional, and I do feel quite passionately about these situations. Forgive me, I will cry. So yeah, I'm just kind of wondering what it is you guys expect to happen from your decision making tonight. Like, I know everyone's trying to do their best and take everyone's considerations, you know, or viewpoints into consideration, but I do feel that there is an injustice going on, and I know that there are issues with residences and business owners and things regarding some of the behavior that has happened with some of the homeless people over the past years. But, you know, how we treat people is shaping our day-to-day life and our future. And I just kind of wonder, you know, what do people want to have happen exactly?
I want them the proper care. I want to find a spot in Grand Forks where it works for everyone. And we need to work as a group. We pull out the city map, we find a location, and we make it work. We make it work.
Well, right now there is no, and I don't mean to interrupt, but right now there is no location.
No, I don't think so. I think there is. And I think we can do this. We need to come together and work on it.
I totally
because
agree.
You're right. They need to be looked after. That could be my son, could be his daughter.
Okay.
They need to be looked after.
This is a sad day that we're making this decision, Council. And
it's not a decision, though. It's actually what you guys. It's the bylaws. It's
so what we're facing here is a bit of an unknown, and in fact, it's not up to the city to find another location or to keep this place open. It is BC Housing and local charities. And so I wish them luck, but I don't think there's anything more at this point that I can expect in terms of us addressing the problem from council.
Just one comment, if I might. When Vance was operating and had the beds available on Thursday, they closed at the end of March. And those people had nowhere to spend the night. What's going on? They're calling it a warming center. It is a warming center. It is a shelter. It is a shelter.
Make your point, please.
And it doesn't belong there.
Okay, you've made that point several times tonight. That's why I'm interested. Thank you. Okay, folks. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Croft.